because you always have a choice, and I'd like to honor the fact that you've made this choice. So thank you for coming. Tonight we have two wonderful featured readers, and then we'll have our usual open mic with more wonderful readers. To get us started, I'd like to read a poem by Mary Oliver. It's called Mindful. Every day I see or I hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It is what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. O good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these? The untrimmable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made out of grass. Mary Oliver. So tonight our two featured readers are Leonard Orr and Joni Stangland. And Leonard has come all the way from Vancouver, Washington, so thank you for making the drive. And Joni has come all the way from, well, Bothell, I suppose, right? But she lives in Seattle. But thank you for making your drive as well, because there's still traffic. And I heard it was pretty bad tonight. I didn't get to experience it. Leonard will be reading first, so I'll introduce him. He is a professor of English at Washington State University in Vancouver. He is the author or editor of 13 books of literary criticism or critical theory, and that's intimidating. His poetry has appeared in many journals, including Black Warrior Review, Rattle, which I'm very jealous of, Poetry International, Poetry East, also jealous of, actually all of these, but particularly those, Natural Bridge, and Rosebud. WordTech Cherry Grove published his book-length collection, Why We Have Evening, in 2010, and Timing is Everything in 2012, and they're both here. So how much are they? $15. Okay, $15. And I'll bet he'll autograph them for free. He has been a featured reader at many venues and has led poetry workshops at the Burning Word Poetry Festival, Lit Fuse, and elsewhere. So please join me in welcoming Leonard Orr.
Thank you, Michael. I'm delighted to be here. I was hoping to get on the list, and this opening came in at the right time. I've been involved in being an administrator for 3 years, and so I was out of the poetry circuit for a while. And this has been part of my rehab to administration, is to get back into writing poetry and to prepare a new collection that I hope I'll send out this next year. My first poem sort of reflects some changes in my poetry, and the title is Optimist. Each time I vote, I pretend that this time everything I hope for will take place, that not only will everyone I vote for win, but that they turn out more liberal than anyone expected, that the evil half of the Supreme Court will take a powder, wars will end, oil will die. Every night I visit your side of the bed to pretend that you are just away for a moment. It is warm from you, and you will rush back to place your head on the pillow beside mine, my nose nuzzling into your hair to breathe you in, my arms around you while you push sleepily back into me, surrounded by my heat, not fully waking by your brief absence, and for some minutes I am whole again. I'd like to follow that with a poem from my first book, Why We Have Evening. Around the year 2000, I made a great change in my approach to writing and concentrated on addressing a particular reader, a particular critic, someone to think about in all of my poetry. Although I think I have a great variety in my poems, when I read in Seattle recently at the AWP conference, someone told me that all of my poems seem to be varied, but they're actually all the same. So whether you find that good or bad, I'll see. So the next poem is called Clouders. Clouders. There, floating slowly overhead, the scarlet-tinged afflatus, while to the west, a squadron of high-flying Canadian clouds, nudging their way south to the coasts of Mexico to pass the winter, returning when signaled by the more alert monarch butterflies. We lay on our backs on the padded blankets. Our thick manual, the Cloud Watcher's Identification Guide, Pacific Northwest, ready to hand, richly illustrated. The colors and shapes make us long to spot them with our binoculars, to record those vast vaguenesses, the hard-shelled blue-gray bulbous, leaving its oily vapor trail, the snowy chortler, invisible but detectable by the sound, invisible but detectable by the gentle sound it makes as it passes. Serious clouders spend hours with CDs learning the distinctive low murmurs. Turning, I am fascinated by the clouds in miniature, sepia-toned, reflected in your sunglasses. I lean as close as I dare, gazing at the beautiful weightless flight from right lens to left of a narrow-necked northwestern nimbus. We listen breathless to its barely audible soprano chugging, like an opera diva running and singing, and you see clouds in sepia I see only in your lenses, now reflected back in my pupils, my retinas, my optic nerves, my brain. That's how close we are. Yesterday, one of my colleagues told me that she didn't know I wrote poetry until her yoga instructor read poems before the class started as meditative pieces. And it never struck me that my pieces were meditative for anyone else. I asked, was it the poem that's about the impossibility of my doing yoga? And she said, no, they were all on other subjects. So that brought this poem again to mind. Yoga practice. I keep trying to practice yoga, but I can't follow the directions. I can't send my spine skyward or sink my sitting bones into the earth. Only you could make me extend such distances, rise and sink simultaneously. Only you know just where my sitting bones are. I am so distracted by the lovely words, Ardha Mukha Savanasana, Dandasana. I chew the syllables, tossing them in my mouth left to right like jujubes, Danda, Danda, Dandasana, and I fail to check that my pelvic rim is parallel to the floor. I need your hands to find my pelvic rim, to see my thigh bones are grounded, fee, fi, fo, fum, ramalama, dandasana, that my spine is lengthened. I can't even breathe properly. Each inhale, each exhale, a word like exile, should be all. I am instructed to count, to think, only inhale, only exhale, but my thoughts sink and rise and search you out. What do you look like when you do this? Or sitting forward bend. My, but you bend so beautifully. I want to wrap myself around you and bend with you. Inhale with you, exhale with you, like so. Paschimottanasana, feeling the heat of you really helps me concentrate. My back rolls and melts and can flow both skyward and earthward. My pelvic rim is clear to me now, syllables sweet and sticky. My lying draped around you bones are in especially good order, and my breath seeps uncounted and audible exactly in rhythm with yours. Last week, I was giving a reading at the Ridgefield Public Library, and all of a sudden, the 9th and 10th graders came in, flooding the room. And I had to entirely go through my poems I was about to read, given this very different kind of audience. And it was quite a challenge. So I was happy that they seemed to enjoy it. I don't know what they understood. So I'm going to read a few poems. How much time do I have, Michael? I'm going to read a few poems. Excuse me? Okay, good. So you signal me when it's time. I'm going to read new poems now because I haven't had a chance to read these before another audience. And I'm very anxious to do that and to start sharing it before I send it out for publications. Drupalettes. Every outing was an education. For one of our first picnics, you brought a basket with fresh raspberries and blackberries. Somehow the lunch took a turn after you saved me from sliding down the riverbank. Some fruit was pressed between us. You held some fruit fragments in your palm and said, "What are these called?" Your fingers crushed more berries, and you drew a raspberry valentine heart over my heart and whispered, "Drupalettes." Then we pressed together, and your skin was printed with the same heart. You made dots of purple juice and squiggles of red juice, the tiny pieces of fruit everywhere. As we cleaned each other, we practiced saying the new word, Drupalettes, Drupalettes. Touched. Our second meeting, an outdoor lunch. We brought sandwiches and manuscripts and sat formal and stiff at a park bench, dressed for an office. At our first meeting, over coffee and poems, our hands, awkward hands, had touched accidentally 3 times. When we left the restaurant, you touched my right shoulder to point out a daytime moon. At the second meeting, we made an unexpected tactile leap. You looked up from reading to find me watching you. I wondered why you held your neck exactly where it disappeared beneath your thin sweater. It was the poems, you thought. The candor made you so warm. You fanned your face. I reached across to hold your wrist. I don't know how I was so heroic. I felt your pulse. I tried to recall the name of the triangle at the base of your neck and could only remember from Ondaatje's English Patient as I touched there with 2 fingers of the hand not feeling your pulse and said, "It is called the vascular szizood." Wind blew our 2 piles of poems together, and you squeezed my fingers. The next day, we had our third meeting, new poems to share, and you told me, as you touched the triangle on my neck, doctors call it the suprasternal notch, but vascular szizood will do for us. For 19 years, I lived in the dry part of the state, the desert area of Tri-Cities in Washington State. And 3 years ago, I moved to the Vancouver area, which is extremely damp, rainy all the time, constantly. Whenever it's sunny, they apologize on the radio and tell people it will quickly return to normal weather. So this is my poem about this transition. Weather outlook. Light snow during the night. Freezing fog in the morning, followed by rain, rain, rain. We can expect delicate showers with some painful pings of ice, like shards of memory, wet mists that cling intimately to the tips of hair and beard, curling and bringing a sense of former wildness and disarray. It will be warming enough for rain, thick drops free of ice, but filled with loss. There will be localized rain of remorse, doubtful rain, rains unexplained and unanswered, rains that suddenly disappear, leaving silence. We felt bereft and look out of the clouds, look for the lost lover, so that when the small hail begins and punches holes through us, we are grateful. Later in the day, expect limpid rain, followed by lingering melancholic mists. I have a series of new poems that are from the point of view of a monster. This went over, by the way, very well with the 9th and 10th graders. I don't know how they pictured it. Monster's gaze. There were my monstrous eyes, bigger than ancient giant squid eyes, always wide open when you were anywhere I could see. I sent lines of sight around walls and trees to find you. You weren't frightened by my persistence in standing near you to watch when you reapplied your makeup, or by my anxiety to see how you used a needle near your eyelashes, or brushed color near your gray-green eyes. During our nights, you saw my eyes, always open any time you woke up, following you wherever you moved, whatever you did. You weren't frightened by my mountain gorilla gazes. When you left, my myopic whale eyes clouded over so I could focus on recalled scenes with you. I am supposed to watch out for floaters. That made me think of my Leviathan body floating by you when you look down from the ferry or pier. You see me and toss down a poem and silently wave. Do we have, okay. Another poem in this series, Monster's Gratitude. You deposited your words inside my enormous ears. So brave of you to place your pink tongue there, to exhale the words into those echoing caverns. After you left, I sealed my ears with tuba mutes, so your words could not escape, so they would stay fresh and sweet, husky and funny. You gave me lessons in forgetting, but they did not take. I accept my gnarled and furred monstrousness. In my cave, under the old-growth forest, in all of my hidden retreats, I have terminal chronic recall of all of our pleasures, every rendezvous, and I am filled with surprise and wonder. All right, just one more of the monster poems. Our contrasts, Monster's Memory is the title. Our contrasts were so vast. How were they overcome? In the woods, I feared my bark, my oaky skin, would leave splinters everywhere I touched you. My hands, two soft, leafy branches, flexed around you, lifted you, shaded you, covered you when it rained. When it snowed on us, you kept us warm and dry, camouflaged. Those were the greatest days. Now I cannot see a forest without pangs, or hear birds without remembering what you said about them as you taught me about them, and the moon, which I know you are still seeing somewhere without me, is a bitter, lusterless ghost. I guess that doesn't quite fall with what I said in the beginning about optimism, but it's relatively optimistic. I've enjoyed a number of times going to Whidbey Island and found it very beautiful and interesting backdrop. So this is called Whidbey. I float unimpeded when powered by memory, fueled by a scent or word or sight connected with you. When we hid away in our eyrie, all of our words flowed from us down the slopes and cliffs across the round gray rocks out into useless bay to feed the gray whales and seabirds. When we would try to sleep, the skylight distracted us with views of clouds glowing from pink moonlight and Pacific sea storms. We drew closer and I watched you sleep. I still feel your back against my chest as our breathing coincided, my face brushing from your hair and neck, your shoulders. I wanted to be awake whenever you woke up. My turning and bending and straightening was only to match your night moves. No matter what was happening elsewhere, those nights are in us both, in our bones, and I yearn for you with all my vast love and clumsy, fumbling soul. Okay. Is that more time? Okay. All right. And one moment. Have to get the page number. How to adore. I realize after seeing you, I need a new language since standard speech is tarnished, mundane, mangled and mingled. I need to say, Kumi Homa Nibrapedi, and let us Luba Mistvi Fagwa Woli. Today you are so Miranutu Pasuchi, if I could be so bold. You dizzied me with your Gwofan so, and the way you zdubel Hakata. No one has ever zdubeled as you zdubel. I know I need to purify myself before we meet. I need to take 3 showers beginning at dawn and recite my psalms to you while I drip dry naked in the bright new sun. Psalm 688 in particular would be part of the daily liturgy, since it is splashed over with your beauty. My manuscripts blurry from hot water, herbal soaps, as I sing in praise of your Tebnash, your perfect Ulanosh Fimla, your sweet Afnakus I love to kiss. After chanting, I dress in hand-painted silks, dazzling colors, thin so they don't restrict my dances to you, the cha-cha freilich, and the twirling dance, as yet unnamed, where for at least 3 minutes I stay 10 minutes above the floor, 10 inches above the floor. I have a lot of poems that are based on science reports that I hear on NPR while I'm driving around. So this had its start in hearing that they called the experiments, the first experiment in the Hadron Collider, Beauty. Okay. They are firing up the Large Hadron Collider, and I am so happy. 1 trillion photons can't be wrong. Wave after wave of photon clouds. How beautiful. 100 billion in this direction, 100 billion in that, hurtling towards each other, like so many crazed James Deans playing chicken, or so many wriggling, hopeful sperm ever optimistic. Yes, yes, I am exactly the photon, headed counterclockwise through that 17-mile tube to collide with you headed clockwise. We rush unstoppably once launched. Whee! To meld and throw off new particles. We let them spray out from the force of our tight, sudden, dazzling hug. I don't care about the quarks and gluons. They are just so much confetti we throw out in our fiesta, spicy candy we give to voyeur physicists when we smash that cosmic piñata with our high-energy embrace. They must have had you in mind when they named the experiment Beauty. C'est vrai, c'est vrai. You are brilliant and hot, and tonight I am one excited photon. We leave only our tiny shadows stuck to the compact muon solenoid and jump into some better other dimension where everything is the way it should have been, where there's no Bush administration. President Gore stopped global warming. And of course, there was no war in Iraq, and everybody likes us. In that dimension, we are together every day. We spoon together every night, not remembering that trillionth of a second after Big Bang. Perennial. Now that spring has finally taken hold, I want to do for you what the sun does for the earth. However far apart we are, in space terms, we are pressed tightly together. I want you to feel my rays daily melt your resisting icy crystals and send the overflow from foggy, snow-packed mountain crevices flowing down to your feet. I want you to overflow, to flood, to breach your levees. I want to wash over your parched plains and have your fill of drink until you thirst no more. I want to make your sap run and make you join in our spawning cycles set before time. Race upstream to be with me. No matter what, no matter those dams and locks and mountains, such puny obstacles for us when it is spring, after all. I want you to bud, to flower, to do the dance of the cambium flow, to send out new shoots, pollen, such heady aromas and rhizomes, to turn all your new surfaces, to face my heat through the lengthening days, unfurl those sweet leaves of yours. Let me land gently in your green, fresh cells. Let's make sugar and give away oxygen. Let's throw off the winter together. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leonard. Now, what was that word that started with a Z?
Which word?
On the chest? Zazood. Okay, I have to look that up. That's
I should mention when I read these poems in the Tri-Cities, there are many engineers and scientists who would sometimes object that I made some error, some scientific error. But I always thought that was hilarious.
Thank you. Our next reader is Joni Stangland, and I wonder, I have a question for you. How many mispronunciations of your last name have you heard over the years?
Well, the commonest one is Strangeland.
Okay.
That's pretty
Okay, all right. But it's not Stangland. I mean, Stangeland.
It's not Strangeland, that's another one.
Okay,
Those
yes, okay. All right. Joni is the author of In Both Hands and Into the Rumored Spring, which is here, both published by Ravenna Press, as well as two chapbooks, Weathered Steps and A Steady Longing for Flight. Joni's poems have appeared in Superstition Review, Crab Creek Review, First Water, Best of Perrine's Fountain, is that correct? And other journals and anthologies. And her website is Joni Stangland. Am I saying it right? Now all of a sudden I'm confused. .com. And what's not in her bio is she's also a winemaker. Tell us something about your wine.
Well, the real winemaker is my husband, and I kind of help. Which means I try not to get in the way, and I wash a lot of things, and I help pour artistic care.
Yes, well, please welcome Joni.
So thank you very much, and I'll reiterate everyone's thank you to all of you for being here tonight. And I will check my time, and we're good to go. So I'd like to start by reading a few poems from Into the Rumored Spring. These are poems that I wrote for a friend who was, she was fighting cancer, and she's now 7 years cancer-free, which I always think is a wonderful thing to celebrate. But I wrote this book in a time of uncertainty, and I am donating the author proceeds to Seattle Cancer Care Alliance. But I will start with The Rain's Lament. Never welcomed when I sluice down your gutters or slide the nape of your neck, when I bead the leaves, slake the soil, make the world that says, drink me. On a good day, you open your throat, sip my tap shadow from a tumbler, but the spring showers me down outside, the day's a slate. I write you letters on the lake's erasures. As light as a scarf, as thick as a wall, I river your window glass, pool in your garden, sink below the ground and vanish. Even as a miracle, I still spill from the sky, wash the plum trees and the green shoots of tulips. You look hard through me to the clean months past the cancer. I'm going to do a quick change of plans here. I get all organized and then I change my mind, which happens sometimes. So have you had that experience where it seems like in this region, no matter where you are, you can always hear trains? You can hear the train whistles, even though you know that realistically the tracks are miles away. I find this often. So this poem is not a lament. The wind floats a train whistle across the water, far from the tracks, the tug in her chest a song in this early city, the long notes of someone bidding goodbye to this town and this morning. She wants to be done with the scalpels and procedures, the sterile rooms with their night nurses in quiet shoes. The wind runs through her. As it passes, the wind is leaving. She closes her eyes, wants hard to stay. And this is her own saying. After the knife, she awoke to a new body and inside her own same self. She thinks about all the parts of her, mysterious organs under her skin. Late winter light plays across her resting eyes, a tease when fatigue weighs on her. But there are ferns to be cut back, sedum and yarrow, a flourish, la verdeggiante speranza. Now she must be reacquainted, as though her body had been lingering without her, along the Grand Canal, lavato al sole, and the lilac light of wisteria, and she will bump into, carefully, her body at an art opening, a book signing, or the coffee house on the corner. She must introduce herself to knees and hands, the arms she grew up with, chest where her breasts were, the legs and lungs she relies on, her own same. I wanted to read this poem because, so lilacs, the lilacs bloom, and it seems like as soon as they get ready, it rains, and they're formed such that each of those tiny little flowerets is like a little cup, and it fills with the water, and the whole bush just kind of goes, oh. So, and that happened this week. I'd been waiting and waiting. It's almost ready to bloom. It's going to bloom, and all of a sudden the rain just came, boom, and the lilac went, oh. So this is, and then spring passes like a stranger. This gray deluge streaks the window, blurs the yard's long grass, brings the lilac boughs down, each flower a fragile chalice. But if she could bury her face in those purple clusters, that perfume, rain washes the scent off the blooming, soaks her to the roots and leaves her a little too clean, a little too cold. So, and my friend that I wrote these poems for, she's a rower, and I did a tiny bit of rowing when I was at an extremely young age, and but whenever I think of water, I immediately go to Venice. It's a reflex, and this poem is "If Venice is a Dream." If she dreams of Venice, she can tell she is missing the water, the physics of floating, the feeling of speed in the wind. She can hear the water slap against wooden hulls, the small splashes of oars. She can feel the wind run through her. She squints against the sunlight that snaps on the lagoon. Se sogna di Venezia, she may find the words she wants and the 1,000 versions of tomorrow. Se Venezia è un sogno, she can wander narrow streets, cross and cross bridges, eat lunch at a table outside. If Venice is a dream, the masks are laughing, the sun on the water is brilliant, the pasta is al dente, the glass is always full. It's a little warm up here, so the lights. Okay. So now I'd like to move to In Both Hands. This is my new book. And I'm going to start by reading a prose poem. Now, I spent years trying to figure out what a prose poem was, and I would ask people. I didn't get it. What's a prose poem? And finally, one of the people I asked said, "Oh, well, it's from the Surrealists." And I thought, okay, I can live with that. That gives me purchase into the idea of a prose poem. So then I was thinking about myths, which can be kind of surreal in themselves. I mean, you've got Icarus, and my favorite example is Athena popping out of Zeus's forehead. And if that's not surreal, right? So there are some myth prose poems in here, and this first one is The Furies, and it's called The Women Won't Take No. The Furies are kind and brilliant like Christmas ornaments or morning sun on new snow and as slippery as ice. Just a taste of danger, they shiver into satin evening gowns and shaken martinis. A little oblivion is good for the soul, a little erasure and strands of freshwater pearls, the sound of wings against frosted windows. Wind-sent and solaced, they'll take their tasks one glass at a time, conquering by increments. Let them swarm to your door, offer olives or pizza, cedar altars with candles, sepia photographs, rituals in the shadows. Let them regale you with stories of every god they ever cheated, every man they meant to save. The Furies will give you only what you've asked for and without warning. And I'll do another myth prose poem. And this one is, it refers to the goddess of the moon, Selene. And there was a poem by Frank O'Hara, it's called Poem, which doesn't tell you much because he wrote many poems called Poem, but the first line is, "There I could never be a boy." And in that poem, there's this line, "As if I were Endymion and she, moon-like, hated to love me." So I had to look up Endymion and find out that he was this fairly hot shepherd, and Selene, the goddess of the moon, would come down and they'd have their time together, and she got pregnant many times and bore many children by Endymion. So that inspired this poem, A Toss and a Tally. If the moon is pregnant, she will sail through your sleep with twitches, dozens of children in her full belly. If your dreams turn to garlic and wine, the moon will eat at your table. If she wakes you, spilling across your hands like a summons, urgent and empirical, you must do the math. Count all the sheep in the cote, all the nails in the floor. Add the shadows as they're born. If a man can carve Kubla Khan on a grain of rice, you can find a map in the milk. Open your fingers when the hours hunch like an old cat and you cannot find your way back. Dawn will arrive with feathers pearled. So this next poem, I think one of the reasons I enjoy reading the prose poems is because there's no line break, so you just go on and on and on. It's kind of a rush. It's sort of fun. And this book has a lot of poems with very short lines, which are slow. The experience of reading them is so different. And this next poem came out of a workshop I took with a poet named Sarah Vapp. It was this process of aggregating lots of images, and you ended up with like 10 or 15 pages of writing and then putting it together and then cutting. And it was a hoot. It was great fun. The other thing about this poem, So Anne Sexton has this poem called Rapunzel, and in that poem, there are many wonderful lines, but one of them is, "For I have left the three Christs of Ypsilanti." And for many, many years, I've wanted to find a way to put Ypsilanti into a poem, so I managed to do it here. This is Signatures, and it's in 3 sections. 1, water stares back. Here a thicket of Nootka rose, Salal clouding low. Here a stand of alders, each tree a moment. The forest stories, writing on the ground, sound puddled. The pond opens, a door, sudden gold surfaces, a sunlight knife. 2, the knife writes. The hand signs its name, 2 cup for water, sunlight streaks the knuckles. A palm, a psalm, another dusk, my kingdom for a thumb. In the hand a glass, wine darker than blood. Hands carve the soil, plant calendula, tomatoes, peppers, kale. Sun on dirt, iron residue. 3, far from Ypsilanti. Noise for the eyes, the wind clapping, slim shivers. Each leaf shimmers its notes without sound. I write around the pool's verge, stack my little words like a city built of toothpicks, empty matchbooks, without light. I leave out the hard parts, but I do not leave. Each silence glints, another knife. Each cut mutes and opens, a bad mouth gulping. Syllables chuck in my throat, in mud, on brambles, empty pockets, raw. I want to give you a white horse, a slap on its rump, a clear path out of here. I want to give you a glass of wine, fish and spinach. I don't want to watch you through that door. And let's see. I'm trying to remember if there's... This is Testing the Atmosphere. The sky might fall, if not, for the bare branch tangle rising from the neighbor's yard. The sky might sweep east across the Pacific, slip down inside this house. Where is the blue vase, the sprays of alstroemeria? Where is the snow on the wires? You lean on air to bring you comfort in this dawn too pale and clouded for stars. Where are the birds? Why did the train leave Gare de Lyon with sun still playing off its wings, darting among the station's rafters? In that memory, the sky is brilliant. The morning is a hurry, no time for songs or murals of Le Trembleur. Here, in your own country, you surrender gladly to quiet before the robins wake. The sky might fill this room with infinity. If you can't see the end, that's just as good as forever. Okay, so now let me do a little time check here. And I'm okay. So just a couple more. So we have the prose poems in here. We have these kind of collage poems with their short little lines. And then we have what I call the crazy map poems. Now, the map poems are crazy for a couple of reasons. One, they're inspired by, you know, those kind of antique style maps that you would have in the atlas, and there'd be the really ornate compass rose on the legend, and there'd be dragons. And my dad had an atlas with those maps in the back, and as a kid I was fascinated by the idea that there were dragons. I thought that was the best. And my own sailing experience, first time I went sailing, they let out the mainsail, and they let out the jib, and the boat tipped, and I thought I was going to die. So, and this was on my honeymoon, right? So to write these poems about, you know, blue water excursions where you're out in the middle of the ocean and there could be dragons was a lot of fun. Map with saints and sparks. Crackling flashes crown the mast, a halo snapping welcome fire. St. Elmo burns the blustering heavens, night's bruises. A saint in the sky's worth two in my pocket. Erasmus and Christopher, bright like stars, the sextant sees, hands to guide the tiller as true as any cartographer's chart. Holy, holy, I suffer sour winds, and running out of limes, I choke on air, plunged in fathoms, I try to forget. I travel, raveled winds down past the earth's belt, conquest and legend echoed by clouds like dark horses racing, bolting before the thunder-punching storm. Lightning severs the sky, a shock netting cast above, my tossing scorches the course. A map will get a woman halfway there, a prayer and a chug of rum the rest. And I will close with Roost. Words tonight fly out as black as crows, oily and stubborn, ruffled and sharp. Feathers may litter the floor. The air holds a fever, a taut pitch, a howl we hitch to, each unsure of our turf, bristling a hiss. And it isn't the kettle or the cat, but we swallow the rest, stinging until the barbs wing into the night. We settle our worries like eggs. Tomorrow we draw the same breath when we see the mountains rising into morning as white as clouds. A crow's nest is a sloppy mess, a loose muddle of twigs in a tree. Love is like that, on a hard day, held with spit and bits of string, on a good day, home. Thank you.
Thank you, Joni. Before we take a break, I have a couple of reminders for you. Our next reading for Soul Food next month will feature Jason Zions, and he's a wonderful orator if you've never heard him deliver his poems. And he has a co-reader that is still a mystery, so we will be announcing that soon. And we do have a website. I don't know how many people actually visit it, but it will be listed on the website. If you search for Soul Food Poetry Night, you'll find it. And I also want to announce the Redmond Association of Spoken Word will have its monthly reading on May 30, and that's over at the Old Redmond Schoolhouse Community Center. And on May 30, the featured reader is Carolyn Wright, so please come for that. Everyone's always welcome. And so for now, we'll take a break for about 10 minutes, get some comestibles, get some books, get a signature or two. If you haven't yet signed up for our open mic, the sign-up sheet is right down here, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you.